A child is never a mistake. A child is innocent. A child hasn't done anything wrong. And to do a wrong to a child is particularly egregious. There's something really wrong with you if you would do this, if you would ever hurt a child. It's just impossible.
Hello and welcome to the Ann Film Scoop.
My name is Anne McElhinney.
And I'm Philip McAleer. How was your weekend?
Well, the worst part of the weekend was that we watched the Tonys, so you don't have to.
The worst part of the weekend was me reading the Jill Biden memoir. I outrank your miserable
I think
weekend.
it's very competitive when you listen to what the people who presented and won prizes at the Tonys had to say, particularly, and we're going to give you a flavour of a little bit of how dreadful this was. Pink was the host, and she kicked off the evening telling the very, very, very receptive audience what theatre was actually for.
Yeah, let's have a listen to that.
Let's have a listen to that.
Welcome to the 79th Annual Tony Awards! Theater is like group therapy. We journey to Midtown not knowing one another. We laugh and cry together, and by the time we leave, we have a different perspective on life. Part of why I'm such a big fan is how purposeful each show is. Instead of going to a Broadway show to forget the state of the world, we go to a Broadway show to look at what the state of the world is. This year, the worst parts of history began repeating itself, and we were given ragtime and liberation. This year, our country grew more divided than ever, and we were given two strangers carry a cake across New York. This year, our trans siblings started to lose even more rights, and we were given Cat's Jellicle Ball. Broadway theater is brave.
You know, she identifies the problems of the world and then identifies how the different plays address those problems, right? Which is, you know, an interesting way of doing it. Now, of course, it's all nonsense, but actually,
what was incredible was there is an actual huge problem that you managed to completely miss, which has been addressed in one of the plays. So there is a bit of an anti-Semitism problem out there, as many of you have noticed. And there's a play called Giant, telling the story of Roald Dahl, who was a bit of an anti-Semite, and yes, it's dealt with in the play. But she didn't mention that, interestingly enough.
The whole play is about Roald Dahl's anti-Semitism, right?
Anyway, enough of that. We're just giving it a touch of this because people really don't want to.
Well, then you had Ali Louis Bouzgoui, who won a Tony for Best Actor in a Musical for a performance in The Lost Boys. Let's play his little speech.
Rant.
Yeah.
Sometimes humanity needs a fantastical lens outside of ourselves to look at and explore questions about our own nature. Vampires represent those who have shunned their own humanity in order to achieve a non-existent sense of superiority. The billionaires will never find happiness from their money. The colonizers will never find fulfillment from the land and lives they steal. The fascists will never find meaning from their conformity, not in this lifetime or eternity. People like to say that theater is a form of escape, but I've found more than ever that in this season and time that the theater is one of the last places people can come to worship the power of true collective human presence. We take a moment to recondition our addiction to desensitization. We ask how we can see ourselves in a stranger's story and then carry that sentiment out into the world that needs us to ask that more than ever. This is dedicated to the beautiful tapestry of immigrant families who make this country really special. May you one day not have to audition for the empathy that should be freely given by this country that benefits from your beauty. For the queer and trans communities who have and always will exist, no matter what people in power try to take away from them. For the people of Palestine who deserve to live a free life, a full life without occupation. For Arab theater makers and artists, may we continue to tell our stories and show our faces so our humanity becomes undeniable and our families can no longer be written off as merely collateral damage. May they know the beauty of our kisses upon each cheek and the romance of a language rooted in passion for love and life itself. If there's one thing we can learn from vampires, it's that life is short, but that's its gift. Find beauty in the ephemeral and gratitude in what is not promised, and always invest in the people that want to see you blossom into your truest self, and hold that space for them in return. I dedicate this award to my late mentor, Ralph Patillo. Thank you.
There's a number of things he talks about conformity. There was nothing more conformist than the Tonys. You won for being conformist, not for being artistic. One thing that caught my eye was about let's have the Arab playwrights, Arab theatre makers and artists. May we continue to tell our stories and show our faces. There was an Italian theatre director who went to the West Bank about 10 years ago, who put on a play of Romeo and Juliet, where he had young male and female actors and actresses playing the roles. The people didn't like this, that young women and men, young girls and boys would be in romantic relationship on the stage. So their theatre criticism and community outreach was they shot him dead.
There you go. The other thing, by the way, horrible story. The other thing that I thought was kind of sort of slightly amusing was the fact that he talks about that billionaires will never be happy. The bit of that kind of struck me was, I'm sure he has a dream play that he would love to have produced. And who does he think would finance that? Because basically, I think most, and I don't know this for sure, but I think we've had little experience ourselves of running a show off Broadway. I don't think if you're trying to make a fortune, the place to invest your money, I don't think would be Broadway. It's not a great bet. So what you do have actually is wealthy people who invest in theatre because for the love of theatre,
yes,
and because they wanted to continue. So this guy who, basically has, said really nasty things about rich people here in his speech, these are the very people that he is going to be begging to help him put on his
These are the very people who he would not be working if it wasn't for these. They call them angels for a reason. Investor angels, you could call them fools, but what wonder! It's great to have fools. Thank God for fools like that, because they really want to create great art.
Okay, Phelim, what's happening? Okay, we're moving on. What's happening in the podcast this week? California, Phelim. There's been a lot of news in California. There's an election going on here, right?
California love the homeless, obviously love drug taking in public. But they also love voter fraud, apparently. So the latest from our stupid but evil elections. And what else is on? Scott Pelley. We have the evidence that he's a useless, biased hack. Scott Pelley, who flounced out of 60 Minutes, actually. So
I like flounced.
Yes, flounced. And we show you how DEI will let you die. We've got a really tragic case from the UK. It's the wokeness will kill. Wokeness kills. And
Jill Biden has written a memoir, as many of you. I mean, I don't think you can be, unless you're living under a rock, you're probably aware of the fact that Jill Biden wrote a memoir. Guess who she forgot to mention? We're going to deal with that. And this week, there's a huge story on the internet about a couple who have been making a lot of money sharing the minutiae of their lives. And when it came to a particular piece of minutiae about their lives, which isn't minute at all,
no,
things didn't go the way that they had thought it would go. And we have a crazy headline courtesy of Ireland at the very end of the show. But let's first of all look at Los Angeles and what's been happening in Los Angeles. I mean, we don't live in a serious city, right?
No, we don't live in a serious city. It's the most, LA as one of those Tony, I think it was Pink, said we live in this wonderful creative city. In Nithya Raman's concession speech, and it was billed as a concession speech, we said we live in a creative city, one of the most creative cities in the world. And the reality is, the only thing they're creative about is voter fraud. Because Nithya Raman was almost 10% percentage points behind when the votes were counted over a week ago. And now she has overtaken Spencer Pratt, who's the Republican. And only two people are going to go through. Karen Bass is going to go through. And then it was supposed to be Spencer Pratt. But they take so long to count the votes here that they've mysteriously found this swathe of votes. And look at this graph, right? Now, it's a very badly constructed graph because it's done by NPR and they want to hide the truth, not illustrate the truth. But that line that's going down, that's Spencer Pratt's vote since the count has gone on all week. And that is Nithya Raman's vote going up. And look at Karen Bass's. So Nithya Raman, they needed votes for Nithya Raman because Karen Bass is already through.
Suddenly they appear. But it's not just mysteriously appearing votes for the count. It's the system they have for allowing people to vote. You'll like this. Do you know one of the acceptable forms of ID? Library card. Even
worse. For registering to vote, for registry vote. Because you're not allowed to ask someone for ID when they vote in LA. You don't have to see.
But to register to vote, go on.
gym membership card.
There you go.
We have a story about that.
We have a story about a gym membership card. If we've got time, we'll tell you at the end of the podcast. But another thing that turned up in all of this talk about the election here in California, all things considered.
All Things Considered from NPR.
All things considered, decided to again outdo themselves and not consider all things.
Yes.
Let's have a listen to them introducing their segment on the election in California. Let's listen to that.
We're 5 days after the election. Results are still coming in two big primary races for governor and for mayor of Los Angeles. In the race for governor, Democrat Javier Becerra, who was President Biden's health secretary last night, clinched one of 2 spots to run in the general election in November. The fight for second place is playing out between a Republican former Fox News host and another Democrat, a climate activist and billionaire.
So very interesting. The thing that they don't mention, I just love it, we're 5 days after the election. So this is California. This is, basically you could say the tech capital of the world, basically, with Silicon Valley. This is a highly developed society here. This is a highly developed, incredibly technology forward thinking and all of that. Brazil has a fully electronic voting system since 2000, by the way, since 2000, so 26 years ago. And in 2010, their presidential election, they gave and with how many people voted? 135 million people voted in Brazil. It took them 75 minutes to say what the result was. India, the world's largest democracy, manual paper. So all things considered, just go ahead and say, we're 5 days into, and don't bother asking the question, why? Why is this taking so long?
By the way, there's a lot of people living in Los Angeles and California, and, you could actually hire them to count the votes, right? But
maybe you just don't want to,
No.
And by the way, as I said, in a place as technologically forward as this place, actually having it all electronic would be great, in fact.
I have to disagree with you there. I just don't trust them. I think the only way...
Okay, well then, France, Germany, the UK and Spain... The UK and Spain hand count paper ballots at polling stations.
Yes.
And the results... typically by late election night or the early morning of the following morning.
That's right.
And France and Spain often finish counting in a few hours.
Yes.
Germany by 6 a.m. the next day.
No, I mean, look, the best thing obviously is paper, right? Because it's so hard. It's there, electronic. I'd be worried.
Okay, but I think I think very basically NPR have a reason for not giving that information, which is kind of fascinating, by the way, that around the world, this is unprecedented.
Yes.
And by the way, the other unprecedented thing that I think it is 179 countries around the world require voter ID, but not California.
Don't get me wrong now. Don't get me wrong. I would accept electronic voting, but, my preference would be the paper. So talking of unprecedented, Scott Pelley, so Barry Weiss, who was fired from the New York Times, or did she resign from the New York Times because they made her life a misery because she didn't follow the liberal heterodoxy. She went off to set up the Substack Free Press, which was hugely successful. She then was appointed the head of CBS News by David Ellison, who is a Trump-friendly, let's say, media mogul who has bought CBS and Paramount. She's gone in and tried to clean house. And you swear to God, you'd think she's gone in and
started murdering people's children.
Yes. So one of the people that actually she fired Scott Pelley. First of all, Scott Pelley, an executive of 35 years, not a very nice person. They had him as the news anchor. Nobody warmed to him. You couldn't warm to him really. He then used a public forum, a public town hall, or in the company to basically defame Barry Weiss and defame his new head of 60 Minutes.
As many people have pointed out, the idea that you could do that at a meeting with your boss, and I think was the first public meeting with the boss, with all the other staff members there, and berate the boss in front of everybody and continue to have your job. I mean, I don't know what universe people are living in if they think that you can get away with that. Because it wouldn't work in any other company. You wouldn't get away with that. So it's kind of amazing that there's some kind of backlash that why was he let go? But I think you have a great story of actually
personal,
kind of an insight into the journalism of Scott Pelley, which isn't actually quite up to scratch, really.
No. Well, he accused Nick Bilton, who's the new executive editor of 60 Minutes, and he accused Barry Weiss of murdering 60 Minutes. Now, they didn't murder 60 Minutes. Scott Pelley and his ilk murdered 60 Minutes. I know this because I have the evidence, right? Scott Pelley is the journalist who promoted a fraudster, Stephen Donziger. In 2009, he went to Ecuador, to the rainforest, and did a story about Stephen Donziger, who was allegedly leading locals, and he wasn't really, to sue Chevron for polluting the rainforest. Great story,
It does. It reads well.
Yes. It was a big scam.
But the intrepid journalist, Scott Pelley, didn't notice that or didn't find that. In his in-depth investigation, he didn't do much in-depth investigating.
No, he did not. And also, another thing was, okay, let's say he was a great fraudster, right? And he
Donziger.
Yeah. And, lots of fraudsters, you can't see through them. There were so many red flags about Donziger. But one of the places of pollution they went to, and this is a fact to look at and go.
And this is easy. This bit is easy.
Was never operated by Chevron or Texaco, which they bought. It was always operated by Petroecuador, the state.
See, this is like the simplest thing. So he goes out, he has the film cameras there and he's got, this awful pollution, whatever. And the very easy, it's super easy this. And it's, by the way, you're required to do this. Like, when did this start? What happened here?
Who owned this?
Who was in charge? And that's available. That was not, no one was hiding that information. That was available.
See, this is another thing about journalism, right? What they do is, 2 days before they go on air, they write to Chevron and say, we're going to do a thing where we're going to say you polluted them. What they should do is, we went to this place, we found this well, we found this pollution. They didn't do that because then Chevron could have written back and said,
nothing to do with us.
That was never our well. Yes, we condemn that. And as we know from our experience in Romania, there's nobody pollutes like the government.
Yes, we've had our own experience with that.
Yes,
that's right.
like that gold mine, but also all those. When you drive to that gold mine, you drive past these industrial towns that are so polluted, and it was all state-run communist enterprises that are the big polluters. And I know, I've personally, as they say, declaration of interest. What's that? Conflict of interest. Literally conflict of interest.
I think this story is so funny because we were in a restaurant, right?
Yes, with James O'Keefe.
That's right. We were in a restaurant with James O'Keefe. And by the way, it was kind of an unusual situation because the restaurant there was no one in the restaurant because we had interviewed James O'Keefe and it was like the afternoon and it was maybe 3 o'clock or 4 o'clock in the afternoon. So there was nobody there on Rose Avenue in Venice.
Suddenly I hear this
voice. And the next thing you hear a voice and you look over there and it's like, hang on, I can't even, is that? And it's Stephen Donziger.
So, and there with James O'Keefe, the veteran, ambusher.
Who knows exactly how to do this, how to behave in a situation like that.
So then we decided to question him about his fraud. And let's watch his behaviour.
Yes.
Stephen, now you're disbarred. Would you like to apologise for misleading people about... Oh!
Hey, stop it.
My phone. Give me my phone.
It's on the ground. Just pick it up and go.
Let go of me. Let go of me. Let go of me. Let go of me.
Yeah, so he assaulted me. But so just to bring you up to date, Donziger was found to be fraudulent. He bribed the judge. He spent, I think, months in a federal prison for criminal contempt of court or civil contempt of court. I can't remember which.
He was under house arrest.
Under house arrest. He's been disbarred in New York and DC. And then he assaulted me.
And I think it's important for people to realize the context of how big this case was, by the way. It was the biggest damages case, biggest number money-wise, like in history. I think it was 6 billion.
18 billion.
Of course, the 18 billion. Of course, it was 18 billion.
We did a play about it. We did this play about it. And actually, the play was so good that leftists from Berkeley sent a reviewer out. When they reviewed the play positively, they refused to run the review.
Of course.
So, but Pelley, right? Okay, let's say he was defrauded. The thing any journalist would do would then do a follow-up on Donziger, on the fraud.
I can't believe I was fooled. I was fooled, but I'm going to go back and show you the real story. Never done.
Never
and
done.
Was that story ever taken down by 60 Minutes? No.
They update on their blog that nobody reads.
Unbelievable.
Yeah. So Scott Pelley, Not buying it.
Not buying it.
Bye, Felicia.
Bye, Felicia. The other story we have this week that is really caught fire, obviously, across the United Kingdom. I'm not sure if an awful lot of Americans are very aware of this story that happened very recently in the United Kingdom. Yeah. Well, it started in December of 2025. Yeah. So in December, this young man, this 18-year-old student,
Henry Nowak,
was on his way getting back to his student accommodation. Yes. What happened, Phelim?
He walked past Vikram Dikwa, who is a Sikh, and that becomes significant.
Sikh.
Yeah, an Indian Sikh, or maybe a British Sikh. And they had words. Dikwa was carrying this large dagger, right? Now, in the UK, it is illegal to carry knives or machetes.
Unless...
And you get 6 months in jail, by the way, for it. Unless you're a Sikh.
And it's part of your religion to carry around carrying a large knife. By the way, none of this makes sense, by the way. I'm sure that even at, I'm sure at airports, they're not respecting the religion of the people bringing the daggers on. Do you think they are? We must look that up. We must discover and let you know.
I think Nowak, who probably had a few pints in him, made some remark about the dagger, because it is kind of unusual. Words were exchanged, and Vikram Dikwa then stabbed him, chased him over a wall on top of a car, stabbed him again and again and again. Dikwa phoned the police,
right,
or his brother phoned the police, and knew the words to use. I've just been racially abused by someone. Can you come? And boy, they came.
Oh yeah, all the lights go off and on in the police station in the UK. If you've anything like that, some kind of hate crime had just occurred. So words had been used.
Yes.
That he at least that's what he said had happened. Yes. That he'd been the victim of some kind of racist attack, of verbal racist attack. So the police come running.
And the cops arrive, and Dikwa is standing there, and the cops go, are you injured, sir?
We might put it at the end of the podcast, because a lot of people wouldn't. I don't think people should watch it. What's amazing is that the Sikh individual, when you hear him talking to the police, he looks perfect.
That's right.
And he's kind of pointing to his eyebrow going, I think I might have been hurt here.
That's
and
right.
You can see he looks perfection. Meanwhile, on the ground is this young man.
Yes.
Who is saying,
I've been stabbed.
And the police officer says,
the guy is pale. Like the guy is,
oh yeah,
you can see he's dying. And the cop says,
I don't think so, mate.
Don't think so, mate.
I don't think so, mate.
And then drags an injured man out from under the car. The guy can't stand. Handcuffs him. And reads him his right as he's dying. You have the right to remain silent. You don't have a right, by the way, to fair and impartial policing. You don't have a right to not die, not be stabbed. You don't have a right to have the same rights as a Sikh and carry a knife. No, you have to be defenseless, and the police have to. And by the way, this is perfectly understandable in some ways from the police officer's point of view. Not accepting racism by a white person is the worst. It's a career-ending crime in the UK police force. Letting the white racist bleed to death is not career-ending. UK police are now taught that white people are intrinsically, systemically racist, and that black and brown people could never be racist and are always victims. And if they deviate from this, then their career is finished. This is from the Metropolitan Police. This is a report from the Metropolitan Police.
Describing neutral and neutrality. 30 patterns of harm. Yeah. Neutrality is often presented as a position of fairness, balance, or objectivity. But in practice, especially in institutions like the Met, that's the police force, neutrality is not neutral. It reflects dominant norms, particularly whiteness, in how risk, credibility, professionalism, and even evidence are defined. To claim neutrality is to claim distance from bias, but that distance is not real. It is structurally coded. It hides power while appearing impartial. This goes on and on and on.
Yeah.
It's absolutely frightening. So this is what they're taught in the police station, so that they're terrified of not responding, always on the side of the person who's claiming that they're being racially assaulted.
You cannot go to an event like that and make an objective assessment. You have to side.
That's what they're told.
So someone can be on the ground, distressed, obviously unable to get up. Someone can be standing there saying, yeah,
looking perfectly fine.
I've got a bruise on my eye, and you look at there's nothing
there. The whole
there.
emphasis then is on the person who is standing up and whatever.
Yes.
And I think what's important at this point to say is that the poor man died. Mm-hmm. The poor young man, the 18-year-old died.
He said, I can't breathe 9 times. He said, I've been stabbed 4 times. I don't think you have, mate. And the last thing he heard was the police officer reading him his rights. And a lot of people have said, this is indifference. And I was reading some of what commentators said. It's not. It's actually proactive policing, totally in line with their training. Not doing what they did would have exposed the officers to disciplinary proceedings and public outrage from leftists and the media. You got to look at this, actually, just for our American viewers. This was a lynching. This was an old-fashioned American lynching. This was a crowd of people hunting down. Iman's family arrived. The guy's family arrived. The mother took the knife off him. The brother phoned the police. The brother told the police what happened. And then, very much like the lynchings from the Deep South, the police were involved as well. The police were there to make sure that everything went the way it should. So they lynched this white guy, and the cops were there to clean up the mess. But not on the side of the victim, but on the side of the perpetrators.
But obviously this mirrors something that happened obviously in the United States, which a lot of people on this side of the ocean will remember, I can't breathe.
Yes.
Which was George Floyd's, the phrase that was used.
But let's go back to Ferguson.
Yes, let's go back further to Ferguson.
The foundation of the original sin of the BLM.
The Black Lives Matter.
So think about it. Establishment people, journalists, either pretended to believe or did believe or were too scared to say otherwise. They honestly believed that a white cop with an unblemished criminal record, had a black teenager at gunpoint with his hands up saying, don't shoot. And he put 9 bullets in him. Now, they believed someone did that.
They were conditioned to believe that.
Or they wanted to believe it. By the way, some people are mendacious too. Don't forget that.
That's true. That means liars, by the way, for anybody who didn't know what mendacious means.
We did a play about that called Ferguson, where we used the transcripts of the grand jury. And it's a wonderful play. 9 of the actors walked out during rehearsals because they couldn't handle the truth, because the media told them it was one thing, the truth is another. Let's play a clip from Ferguson. This is, we give this, all the people in the grand jury were anonymous. So we give this woman the name Kira, or Ciara, as the Americans would call it. She has a Black Liberation tattoo on her arm. They pursued her for months, trying to subpoena her. She was a most reluctant witness. Let's hear
how she described what happened in Ferguson.
You characterize it as charge. Could he have been staggering?
When he first started running, ma'am, he was not staggering. He was charging this officer, and that's how I feel it was. Like, he was running towards him like a football tackle. Like he was going to tackle the officer. If he got close enough, I feel like he would have tackled him against the car.
And there's no way he could have been saying, I'm hurting, I'm giving up. There's no way you feel it could have been mistaken?
No, it wouldn't have been mistaken.
This is really important.
I'm not, really big on talking to the police or defending police or anything like that. I'm just being real honest with you.
That's all right.
I feel like the officer was in the right. And that is a lot of saying. Because other than that, I ain't got nothing to do with them.
I mean, do you feel that this could have ended up any other way?
Yeah, it could have. If Michael Brown had just stopped running, yeah, it could have ended a different way. That's the other way. It could have ended another way. The officer had no choice. He could have had another choice, but it could have ended in him being physically hurt.
This is, he was on a crime spree that day. He had already assaulted an immigrant shopkeeper, robbed a shop, attacked a police officer. And there's
still a lot of people around the world who don't know the truth about Ferguson. It's kind of extraordinary. We remember, months afterwards, we went to see U2 in concert. By the way, under duress, somebody brought us as a present. Don't ever give us a present of U2 concert tickets, please. And Bono came out on the stage, and this was part of the set piece that he did on the world tour that he did around the world. He walked out on this long platform and had his arms up saying, "Don't shoot, don't shoot, don't shoot." So that message went everywhere, and it was a lie. It was a complete lie, as you've just heard
Can
from
I
the
just say
witness.
something really controversial?
Yes, Philip.
In Bono's defense.
Oh, no.
Yeah. In Bono's defense.
He's not a bad singer. Is that what you're going to say?
No, in Bono's defense, he was very, very good on October 7. He was the only musical artist who said, I'm paraphrasing here, these savages went in to a musical festival.
He's in Vegas. He said that the next day, basically.
Yeah.
He's the only one who
and
did.
killed hundreds of young people.
He was
at a
pretty
musical
quiet
festival.
after that, though.
Yes.
Yeah. He was good on the first day, but then he went pretty quiet when he realized the way the wind was blowing and
Yes.
nobody else from the music industry was saying that. So he decided, you know what? I'll be a joiner. I don't want to be singled out as being this friend of Israel.
His instincts were good, let's say. Okay.
But also the other thing that obviously this story reminds us of is it reminds us of the whole George Floyd story. And I think all we need to say with that is that basically, if anyone has seen the toxicology report for George Floyd, it is kind of extraordinary that Derek Chauvin is in prison. It's a travesty. Because according to George Floyd's toxicology report and his death certificate, he had no life-threatening injuries identified, no facial, oral, muscle, or conjunctival, whatever. No injuries of this, no scalp, soft tissue, brain injuries, no chest wall. So no injuries. However, he was full of fentanyl and a huge cocktail of drugs.
Remember, kids, fentanyl kills. You see all these things. We seized 3 kilos of fentanyl, which is enough to kill 2 million Americans, right? So fentanyl kills unless it's George Floyd, where it had no effect on him at all.
The reason we wanted to bring this story to a conscious level is that just to see how the media reacted to these stories very, very differently. And not alone the media, but also how political leaders. So after George Floyd died from taking too many drugs, look at all these leaders taking the knee, like Keir Starmer. So Keir Starmer, who is now the Prime Minister of the UK, took a knee for George Floyd.
But took days to respond.
To the murder of this young man, this 18-year-old student. And even after he finally said something, he didn't take a knee for him.
No.
So these are not good people. These are definitely not good people. And the media definitely are supporting them in this incredible two-tier system.
Two-tier policing. Talking of not good people.
Phelim has been reading the Jill Biden book, so you don't have to. And I've been reading it as well.
Memoir. So what struck you about it?
I want to start by saying, so I bought it first, then Phelim bought the actual hard copy, and he's done the much harder work of actually reading an awful lot of the book. But what I did was I bought the e-version of it, the Kindle version of it, because I had a particular thing I wanted to do that I thought was important. So on the Kindle version, I searched for the name Navy Roberts, who is a grandchild of Jill and Joe Biden, and who is the child who was born of the woman in Arkansas who had a relationship with Hunter Biden. And he basically denied paternity until he was forced by a court. Hunter Biden was forced by the court to take a paternity test. And of course, the child is actually his. So I searched for the name. So in the memoir, and by the way, I just find it hilarious. It's a memoir, Yeah. She had forgotten that Navy Roberts exists. So Navy Roberts does not appear at all in the book. If that isn't bad enough, so, and it's awful. I think it's really awful. But to actually compound the injury of this, because Navy Roberts is 7 years old now, but she won't always be 7 years old, and she'll grow up. And this is a book, and books are in libraries. They're there in hard copy. You look them up and you look through them, as Phelim has done. On top of everything else, Jill Biden decided to write a dedication at the front of the book. And this is what she wrote in the dedication. To my daughter, Ashley, my granddaughters, Naomi, Finnegan, Maisie, and Natalie. She named them. She named these granddaughters and did not name Navy Roberts. And she goes on in this dedication. And to all women finding their way forward, may you embrace your independence and stay true to yourself. What a horrible person.
Yeah.
When she wrote that, she knew what she was doing. And it made me remember, and I think some of you might have heard me do this before in the podcast, it made me remember that Hunter Biden, the father of that child, did the very same thing with his book, his memoir. His memoir, by the way, which was described by somebody as searingly honest. Searingly honest. And in his book, he says Hunter Biden is the father of 3 daughters, Naomi, Finnegan, and Maisie. He lives with his wife, Melissa Cohen, and son, Bo, in California. Again, he did the very same thing. And to write a child out of history like that, and I've looked this up. I mean, psychologists say that this has an awful effect on children, that this kind of lack of recognition. And what's particularly awful about it, I think, in this case is these are the most powerful people on the planet. There's absolutely no reason at all not to recognize this little person. A child is never a mistake. A child is innocent. A child hasn't done anything wrong. And to do a wrong to a child is particularly egregious. There's something really wrong with you if you would do this, if you would ever hurt a child. It's just impossible. My husband, by the way, who's very sensitive, if we're watching something on the television and it shows where you can see something's going to happen to a child, my husband has to turn the television off. And I agree with him. That's how most people react to anything happening to a child. This is what the Bidens did. And just to make it worse, I'll finish this point. What makes it even worse is Jill Biden has just been interviewed by everybody. And I mean, literally, it's not even worth actually nearly listing them, but I will. I'll list a few of them. CBS Sunday Morning, Today NBC. She was on The View. ABC's The View with all the women, you know. She's been in People magazine. Everyone interviewed her. Not one journalist said, why did you cruelly, unnecessarily list your grandchildren and leave this child out? Nobody did that. These are bad people. So this is what's wrong with journalism. This is literally what's wrong with journalism. You know, Scott Pelley, there was a whole thing about Scott Pelley being brave, you know, brave journalists, this whole thing about brave journalists. Like, shut up. Like, really shut up. The proper thing to do would be say, we noticed, and by the way, the women of The View, they're disgusting. Well, obviously everybody knows that. They're really awful people. But the idea that they didn't say, look, hang on, Jill, there's something we wanted to mention to you. You did this dedication and you intentionally left out a child who is a relative, like who is a blood relative of your husband's and your stepson. And you intentionally did this. How can you do this? So that's who these people are, you know. I find it really hard to understand. As I said, a child has never done anything wrong. A child a child is completely innocent. The mother worked in a strip bar or whatever. I mean, is it because they think that she's white trash or something? I don't even get it. I still don't get it, because these are liberals. We're meant to be the fuddy-duddy, conservative religious types that we're awful, whatever, judgy types. You know, funny enough, and I know plenty of very religious people because since I became a conservative, and I can tell you, they'd be very, very unjudgy when it comes to a child. They're very unjudgy. I mean, it's almost like, and I love that thing actually. I love that point. And I've just remembered, people who say, how can religious people, like Trump? And I'm like, yeah, because religious people, what they don't understand about religious people is the one thing that religious people are really conscious of is that they're sinners. That's what they're really, really aware of.
Yes.
They have no problem with sinners because they recognize in the sinner themselves. So I don't know how these people could justify that. There is no justification for what they did.
Yeah,
none.
Funny. And liberals think they're perfect. Look, I don't want to spend too much time on this. I've been reading the book. It's a funny book, actually. It's badly written. It's short. That's one good thing about it. It's also had 3 I bought it on the day of publication.
Oh, actually, we took a photograph of this at the bookstore. So have a look at this.
$3 off.
They were already discounting it the first day it was published. I think that has to be a record.
A couple of funny bits. She grew up as a 70s feminist, reading Ms. Magazine and all that. But despite all this, when Geraldine Ferraro was appointed as Walter Mondale's running mate, it was clear that much of the country still found the notion of a woman in that position of power almost unthinkable. No, they were fed up with the degradation and just awfulness of the 70s and Jimmy Carter's soft on crime, soft on Iran, soft on, put a jumper on if you're cold. This is what he told people, but, we had a ration, no. So they elected Reagan. It wasn't anything to do with Ferraro or Mondale. Well, it's everything to do with Mondale. There's another paragraph here. She's talking about how grief affected the family, and how it led Hunter to drugs. Because previous to the death of Beau Biden, Hunter, this is a quote, Hunter was a successful lawyer teaching at Georgetown School of Foreign Service and serving as board chair of the World Food Program, USA. Like, how did he get those jobs?
Wow.
Successful lawyer. He was on the board of an oil company from Eastern Europe, despite having no oil experience or Eastern European experience. How did he get the job at Georgetown? Through Joe Biden. And have you ever met anyone or heard anyone who's ever taught by him at Georgetown? Did he actually give lectures? I don't think so.
You'd expect at this point you'd have heard from somebody saying, oh, well, he taught me and it was a very inspirational class. You know, it changed my whole trajectory of life.
Nah.
We have this story that I have to talk about, which is extraordinary. So this week, there's been this huge story on social media. Not everyone is on social media quite to the extent that we are, which is a sad indictment of our whole lives. But this couple who make a living going through the minutiae of their lives and, you know, kind of oversharing their lives. Their names are Jesse and Ashley Ridgway, and they got married, whatever, in October. They have a channel with, 4.3 million people subscribe, over 2 billion views. So they make millions of dollars sharing the minutiae of their lives. And so they got married and it's all very exciting. Then it turns out they're having a baby. So there's a picture of them. And then let's listen to them saying that they're going to have a baby. Let's listen to that.
Hey there, Joey's Joel Pound McGinnis here, and we're having a baby! Yay! Crazy. We just got married, it feels like.
Yeah, I feel like we just sat down and did this type of thing.
Just yesterday, you were sitting on the couch in this room, and I was introing you to the channel.
That was so sweet.
And now, Juggies, the fateful day has come. We're introducing a new member to the family, little Jessie.
Little bit. Well, we don't know if it's
we don't know the gender.
They're going to have the baby and they're all delighted. They're so excited. They're pregnant. And then they were talking about how exciting that all was. And then he posts a video of the ultrasound and he says, look, first look at the little nugget. So we actually see that video and it's the baby there. Look at the baby moving around. April 22nd, moving on then to April 22nd, they found out the baby was going to be a boy. And they also were told that there was a strong chance that the baby would have Down syndrome. And then and by the way, and that video came out April 22nd, and the title of that video was, "We May Lose the Baby." So they're somehow equating having a Down syndrome baby with "we may lose the baby." So, which is kind of odd. But we move on from that. Then we come to May 27th and they find out that baby actually is going to have Down syndrome. Let's watch them. Let's watch that video.
Whether it's good or bad, we just want to know at this point. It's been a long month and a half since you guys saw us find out the gender and then that bad news. I didn't share this publicly, but we did have an ultrasound done around a month ago. And we looked at the NT, or the nuchal translucency or something. Basically, there's this like thin line on the ultrasound that denotes sometimes if the baby is more likely to have Down syndrome or not. Here we go. So we're going to see the result. I have to download the official report. Abnormal insight result. Consistent with trisomy 21. No.
What is it? Wait. Where are you seeing this?
No.
Let me see. I can't see it.
It says abnormal insight result. Blah, blah, blah. Showed 3 chromosome 21 signals consistent with trisomy 21 Down syndrome. Genetic counseling is recommended. Pattern consistent with trisomy 21. Hey.
And what I thought was very interesting then was, so that, again, remember the date. So this May 27th, they work it out and the tears and all of that kind of thing. And then a week later, on June the 3rd, Jesse, the husband, posted, not a video, but posted a post on X, which was formerly Twitter. And he says they've already aborted the baby. So this is less than a week after they find out. He's saying basically they've already aborted the baby. And here's what he says. He has a big statement, which we can put it in the show notes and people can read the whole thing. But he says, when I first confronted this news, I was shocked, but optimistic. Maybe they're going to be a little slower intellectually, then we'll make it work. I signed on to be a parent, come what may, but I just didn't fully understand what Down syndrome entailed. Once we made it public, it became clear that most people don't know what Down syndrome entails. And no, it's not the same as autism. God, what planet is he living on? 50% of babies with Down syndrome have heart defects, 75 will have hearing challenges, over 50% will have vision problems, and it goes on and on and on like this. Sadly, the list is long. Feel free to look it up, he said. Down syndrome, here's what he says, by the way, and I'm just thinking, and you know who I'm thinking of here. Down syndrome isn't a blessing. It is objectively from a health perspective. I didn't realize just how rough it is for the child, let alone the family. So and then he goes on, we spoke with doctors, friends and family and genetic counsellors and learned that up to 90% of women terminate their pregnancy after learning the baby has Down syndrome. And this is what he says. We made a difficult decision that we believe in the long run will be beneficial for our family. Thankfully, we had a choice. It will take a little time to move on, but we're excited to try again in the future and have a better outcome. He wrote that on June the 3rd and 24.4 million people read that. And 18,000, last time I checked, had made a comment. One thing that I did...
And were those comments positive?
I would say in the main, the comments were not positive, Phelim. People were really, really disgusted and disturbed by the way in which he framed all of this. I decided to go back into some of his earlier posts, and I found a post from May. So the middle of May 2026. So a couple of weeks before this abortion... he writes, and he has a photograph of himself with his dog. And he says, Sweet's super 6th birthday. That's the name of the dog, Sweet, I think. After she was diagnosed with stage 4 kidney disease last year, around her 5th birthday, the vet said she had weeks to live. If we were lucky, maybe a few months. 1 year later, she is still fighting. She's in the 0.0001% of superhero dogs that can continue to live with no kidneys. We all need a hero in this life. Jenny has been one of mine. He literally wrote that a couple of weeks before they aborted their baby. And one thing that jumped out at me about all of this was it sounded a lot like he had gotten a lot of advice from medical experts to terminate, to abort the baby, to kill the baby. And it reminded me of a brilliant BBC documentary. I'm going to put the name of the BBC documentary and a link to it in the show notes because it's really, really worth watching the whole thing. And it's called A World Without Down Syndrome. And it's absolutely amazing. But there was one section I thought we'd play for you, which focuses really on the kind of advice people get when they get a Down syndrome diagnosis. Let's listen to that.
But legally, you can terminate a Down's pregnancy right up to birth, as Down syndrome is classed as a severe disability. And if you look at the leaflets the NHS hand out to mothers when they get the diagnosis, it does sound severe.
I mean, I complications, heart problems, gut problems, hearing problems, vision problems, thyroid problems, dementia. I think that just makes you frightened. A medical description will only list all the possible things that could go wrong. And it's not then compared with the list of all the possible things that could go wrong with a typical person.
So what comes out of that is this idea that if you're getting advice and you've gotten this, basically all the advice is abort. That's what all the advice is. Yeah. And this documentary, which is so great, it's made by an actress who was in the Bridget Jones' Diary series, and she's really amazing. And she has a child herself who's Down syndrome. And she decided to make this documentary to look at the situation where they had cured Down syndrome in Iceland. And you know how they cured Down syndrome in Iceland, Phelim, do you? So they kill all of the children that have Down syndrome in Iceland, and that's how they've cured it, which is a very odd way of describing a cure. But I thought we'd have a look at a few people out there in the world who would very much vehemently deny and oppose what had happened to this little person. So the first one I want to look at is a guy called Frank Stevens, who's an actor from Arkansas. And here's him talking. I think I'm trying to think where he was talking, but I was talking at the United Nations or at a conference. But it's a brilliant clip of him, and he's also very funny. Let's watch that now.
Good day. My name is John Franklin Stephens. I am a man with Down syndrome, and my life is worth living. When my body was first forming, when the first 2 cells divided, each of them had one extra chromosome. People like me tend to be a little shorter because our arms and legs are shorter. Our faces are a little bit flatter because our cheekbones and noses don't stick out from our faces as much. All that adds up to a person who is a little bit uncommon. In my case, I got uncommonly handsome. Don't worry, I am very accepting, very inclusive. I won't think less of you just because I have more chromosomes than you do. I truly believe a world without people like me would be a poorer world, a colder world, a less happy world.
He's just the most great guy. And then the other person, which I love this story. So Phelim, the next clip is from Heidi Crowder, which...
Is that the person who I viciously attacked?
This is somebody that's famous and viciously attacked.
Okay, not viciously, but I almost viciously attacked on
the
Twitter.
Gosnell movie came out
in America.
In America, and it wasn't available in the UK at the time.
And then somebody wrote to me on Twitter and said, I love your Gosnell movie. I said, where are you based? And she said, I'm in the UK. And I said, how did you get to see it in the UK? And she says, well, I did I can't even remember.
VPN or whatever.
VPN. So a virtual private network, which I can't even pronounce. She did it and fooled her computer into thinking that it was in America, managed to watch the film. And I was about to attack her, right? Saying, this is illegal. You cannot do this. You should.
And then we looked up who she was, and turns out
she has Down syndrome.
She has Down syndrome. She's absolutely fabulous, by the way. Her name is Heidi Crowder.
So a Down syndrome person is more technologically advanced than I am. But
she's an amazing person, and she's married to another person with Down syndrome, and she's just really, really lovely. But here she is talking on the television in the United Kingdom, and I think the point that she's making is extraordinary, and it's an extraordinary piece of information about the legal system in the United Kingdom, where there is a cutoff time for abortion in the United Kingdom. I think it's like 24 weeks. However, if you have a Down syndrome diagnosis in the United Kingdom, you can have an abortion anytime you like. So here's her talking about that on the television in the United Kingdom. Let's watch that.
Well, at the moment, the law is that a typical baby can be aborted up to 24 weeks, and then a baby with Down syndrome can be aborted up to full term. And as someone with Down syndrome, I find it deeply offensive, and it makes me really upset and cry, because it reminds me that that no one loves me. But I know that they do.
What is life like living with Down syndrome?
I would say that it's just asking for an adventure and a life of opportunity. And I would say see the person behind it as a chromosome and see the inner beauty.
So the other thing, so as I said, loads and loads of people, 18,000 people have commented so far on this guy saying what they had done. And I thought some of the comments were great. Somebody wrote here, I know someone who once got a similar diagnosis. She chose to keep the baby. Turns out the test was wrong and her baby came out perfectly healthy and normal. The woman was my mom and the baby was me.
That's right.
Another person wrote and said, imagine telling people with Down syndrome that their lives are disposable and thinking that you're the good guy.
Yeah.
Unreal. Another person, I was born with muscular dystrophy. It's okay to be born not perfect. And another person wrote, this is incredibly sad. Your child deserved a chance at life. Some of the sweetest and most wonderful people I know have Down syndrome. God sent you a blessing and you destroyed it. It's just an extraordinary story. And I think it kind of proves it, by the way, the fact that we don't all live in the same world, by the way. So they're living in such a strange, small world, whatever world, not small world, but somehow they're living in a world where they thought saying that publicly would not get them a backlash. To quote Tony Award-winning actor, they live in a world of conformity. You know, he thought, oh, we've aborted our Down syndrome child. Everyone's going to think we're great.
At 21 weeks, this will get us clicks. This will get us clout.
We're going to make money.
We're going to make money. You know, maybe he didn't think.
Well, they do make money from everything.
But this would be a positive for them. And we're talking of pregnant people,
Yes. For our crazy headline this week, we go to the Irish newspapers, and this particular headline, exam question. So the final exams in Ireland are happening right now. They're called the Leaving Cert. And in the exam,
schools.
So here's the headline. High school. Here's the headline. Exam question on a pregnant person sparks angry debate. So basically, the 2026 applied Leaving Cert exam in social education asked a question. Besides taking folic acid, describe 2 positive lifestyle changes a pregnant person should make to protect the unborn child. So that's what's happened to Ireland. They're basically, people in Ireland are being gaslit by being asked to accept this kind of language, which is just a lie. There's no such thing as a pregnant person. There's only pregnant women.
I want to make this point. They tried last year to remove the word woman from the Irish Constitution. They were modernising the Constitution. It was rejected by 80% of the population.
That doesn't matter.
But for the NGOs and the government-funded activists who are setting these exam papers and setting standards, they are just pretending like it never happened and trying to write the word woman out of Irish life.
They're trying to do it in a lot of progressive places. The other little detail of this story that caught my eye was that on the paper, the exam paper, where they asked the question, they also had a photograph, to kind of liven up the paper, I suppose, make it look more visually interesting. And the pregnant person, the woman that is pregnant in the photograph, is black, which is kind of unusual because the population of black people living in Ireland is 1%. So they decided to represent pregnant women in Ireland, first of all, by not saying woman, and then by someone who is part of 1%, ignoring 99% of the population who are not black.
And I think most of the black people in Ireland, they're black males, actually, because they come over as refugees. So the number of black women in Ireland is probably 0.3% of the population.
But it's very, very important that we're inclusive and that we constantly tell people that we're inclusive. So we have to do that in the most ham-fisted possible way.
Ireland is the most moral nation on earth.
We are. We're just better than everyone. We're better than everyone. We're here doing the job that Americans just won't do.
That's right.
That's who we are.
Be good people.
We're being good.
Yes. Okay, that's all for the show this week. Thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. We're going to play that video now, but this is a warning. We're going to play that video. It's very disturbing, of the young Henry Nowak being abused by the police, actually.
Yeah, it's very a warning. I think it was a good idea to put it at the end. And we'll see you next week.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
He's dropping side to side, so I'm just trying to keep him set up.
Alright.
He's got a mouthful of blood. I don't want him.
I can't breathe. He was on the bin on the other side of this keep.
He's jumped over these fences and stuff like that. And he's up
Move
here.
away, mate.
He's obviously fallen from there and he slipped from there.
There's other shoes left over there, mate. What's your name, mate? Huh? Has anyone been hurt other than him?
Yeah, me. He's grabbed my brother. He's took my turban off. Started grabbing my head.
Are you injured?
Yeah, I've got swollen eye, little bruise.
Alright, just step back a little bit for me. Someone flag these down.
I'll be stabbed.
Right, let's get you out of there, shall we? Oh.
I was in bed asleep. Whenever we just find out, someone's attacked me. I can't breathe.
Grab his other arm. What's happened to you, alright? You've been stabbed? Whereabouts? I don't think you have, mate. Hand?
I can't breathe.
Put the hand in the cuff, mate.
Yeah.
This is like
breathe.
times this has happened to us. We've been walking, we parked literally. Can we get a van? We've had people racist
90 foot.
Nothing happens.
Sandy's been stabbed, so
Where
let's
is it
just
you
check
think
him.
you've been stabbed? In the face? Oh no, but we have to check, don't we?
Right.
In the face?
Just get these to back off, get their details on that, and I'll keep hold of him.
Should we
Right, keep you on your side, mate. You better retrieve then. Saying to him, I'm keeping him on his side. We were sat up when we had him here, but he didn't like it. What's your name, mate? At the moment you are under arrest, and that's for assault, so you do not have to say anything, may harm and defence if you do not mention when questioned. It's up to which you later rely in court. Anything you do say may be given in evidence, alright? It's going to be sick, I think. I just want you to call it.
Yeah, we've got this male, he's
just
been beat up. Are we able to get an ambulance, please?
His pupils aren't even reacting.
Hey!